So if you ask, like, 10 people to name the most ridiculous lawsuit they've ever heard of, I bet 9 of them give you the same answer.
It's got to be the McDonald's hot coffee case.
Right. It's the ultimate punchline. The version we all think we know is just blessed. It's baked into our culture. A woman is driving, spills coffee on herself, and then wins this lottery of millions for something that was her own fault.
It's become the poster child for a legal system
Yeah.
gone totally off the rails. But that story, it isn't just a simplification. It's, and I'm not exaggerating here, probably the most successful and distorted PR campaign of the last 30 years.
And that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive. I mean, I went into our source material for this, the retro report from the New York Times, that case study on compensation culture. And I was expecting, to have a few facts cleared up.
Right.
But I was actually angry by the time I finished because this isn't about a simple spill. This is about a company knowingly selling a dangerous product and then systematically destroying the victim's reputation to cover it up.
And that's our mission today. We need to take apart that urban legend piece by piece. We have to look at the actual physics of the burn, the calculated risk McDonald's took, and then, and this is crucial, how the story was twisted to push a massive political agenda.
Okay, so let's start with the person at the center of it, because greedy schemer is the label that stuck.
Stella Liebeck.
Stella Liebeck, she was 79 years old. This was not some, career litigant. She was a former department store clerk. She just moved to Albuquerque to be closer to her family.
Right, a grandmother.
Yeah.
And we have to just right off the bat kill the driving myth. I would say 99% of the jokes about this case rely on the idea that she was recklessly driving down the highway.
Which is completely false. I was looking at the actual case details. She was in the passenger seat. Her grandson was driving, and the car was parked. He had already pulled over so she could add her cream and sugar.
And the car itself is a really important detail. It was a 1989 Ford Probe. So if you can picture those sporty cars from back then, they had those slanted dashboards, bucket seats.
And crucially, no cup holders.
No cup holders.
Oh.
It feels like ancient history now, but yeah.
Yeah.
So she's sitting there, car's at a standstill, and she does what any of us would do. She puts the styrofoam cup between her knees to hold it steady while she pulls off the lid.
And that's when it happened. The whole thing tipped. But it wasn't a splash. The cup basically collapsed, and all of that coffee, it poured directly into her lap.
And she was wearing cotton sweatpants.
This is the part of the story where the whole frivolous idea it shatters. The sweatpants, they didn't repel the liquid. They acted like a sponge.
Like a wick? Yeah.
They absorbed this near-boiling liquid and just held it tight against her skin. We're not talking about a little red mark you run under the tap.
No, we're talking about full thickness, third-degree burns.
I really want to be specific here because the medical reports are they're gruesome. She was burned on 16% of her body. And 6% of that, 6% was third degree. That means it burned through every layer of skin down to the muscle and fat.
The jury saw photos of her injuries, the burns to her groin, her inner thighs.
Yeah.
And the lawyer said you could just feel the entire mood in the room shift. This was not a laughing matter.
She went into shock almost right away. Her grandson rushed her to the hospital. She was there for 8 days. She needed multiple painful skin grafts. I mean, they were literally taking skin from one part of her body to try and rebuild another. She lost 20 pounds. She was disabled for nearly 2 years.
An absolute nightmare.
So that brings us to the lawsuit itself, because the story does that she immediately saw dollar signs. But her first step was, well, it was incredibly reasonable.
Heartbreakingly so. Stella Liebeck had never sued anyone in her entire life. She didn't want to go to court. She wrote a letter.
A letter to McDonald's. In it, she basically said, "Your coffee hurt me very badly. Please check the temperature so no one else gets hurt. And could you help me with my medical bills?"
And the bills at that point were about $10,000. She asked for about $20,000 total to cover that, and her daughters lost wages from taking care of her.
So basically, pay my doctor and fix your coffee machine.
Exactly.
And the response from this multi-billion-dollar corporation, I'm looking at the note here, they offered her $800.
$800. It was a complete dismissal. It was corporate speak for go away.
And that's the moment this whole thing changed. If they had just paid her medical bills, we would never have heard her name. They forced this into a lawsuit. They refused to settle.
So once the lawyers got involved, the whole strategy had to shift. Her attorney realized this wasn't just about an accident. The core of the case became that the product itself was defective. It was, in legal terms, unreasonably dangerous.
Okay, so let's get into the temperature, because this is the heart of it. I actually went and checked my coffee maker at home this morning, It brews at maybe 160 degrees Fahrenheit. By the time it's in the mug, it's more like 145. It's hot, but you can sip it. McDonald's corporate policy mandated that their coffee be served between 180 and 190 degrees.
That is a whole different world. That's near boiling.
Yeah.
A burn expert testified that liquid at 180 degrees will cause third-degree burns in about 12 to 15 seconds.
At 90.
3 seconds. Stella Liebeck, with scalding liquid trapped in her clothes. She never stood a chance.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second, because this is what the critics always say. They argue people want their coffee hot. You know, if you have a long commute, you want it to still be hot when you get to work.
And that's the argument McDonald's made. The problem was, first, they had zero market research to prove customers wanted it that hot, 180 plus. But more importantly, they admitted that at that temperature, the coffee is physically undrinkable. It would burn your mouth and throat.
So they were knowingly selling a product that was unsafe to consume at the point of sale.
Exactly. And then came their other defense, the numbers game.
Right, the statistically insignificant argument. They said, look, we sell billions of cups of coffee. A few burns are just a drop in the bucket.
That was the moment that I think really turned the jury against them. A McDonald's executive got on the stand and admitted they knew about the burn risk. In fact, in the 10 years before this case, they had logged nearly 700 complaints of serious burns from their coffee.
Wait, 700? So this wasn't a freak accident. They were on notice.
Oh, they were on big-time notice.
Oh.
But the executive basically argued that 700 burns, when you sell billions of cups, is a statistical zero. He told the jury, in so many words, that burning 700 people was just an acceptable cost of doing business.
I mean, mathematically, I guess I see the cold logic. But you can't say that to a jury of actual human beings. It sounds like you're saying we did the math, and it's cheaper for us to hurt people than to turn down the heat.
And that's exactly how the jury took it. It wasn't just the spill that cost them the case. It was the sheer corporate arrogance. They felt McDonald's had to be punished.
Which brings us to the big number, the famous $2.9 million. This is the figure that became the joke, but the way the jury arrived at it is actually incredibly logical. It's almost never reported.
No, it's not. They awarded $200,000 in compensatory damages for the pain and the medical bills. But, and this is key, they also found Stella 20% responsible for the spill.
So they reduced her part of the award.
Right. They knocked that down to $160,000.
Okay, so that's the $160K for her actual damages. Where did the other $2.7 million come from?
That was the punishment, the punitive damages. The jury asked a simple question. How much money does McDonald's make from coffee sales in a single day? The answer came back. About $1.35 million.
Wow.
So the jury decided to fine them exactly 2 days' worth of their coffee revenue. That's where the $2.7 million comes from.
When you put it that way, as 2 days of coffee sales, it doesn't sound like a lottery jackpot at all. It sounds like a corporate speeding ticket.
That's all it was. It was a message. But here's the biggest reality check of all. She never got that money.
This is the part that drives me crazy. The media ran with the huge number, but they never covered the follow-up.
Never. The judge in the case reduced the punitive damages himself way down to about $480,000. So the total award was about $640,000.
And then they settled, right, to avoid appeals.
Exactly. The final amount is confidential, but most legal experts agree she probably walked away with less than $500,000.
So after you take out the lawyer's fees and the taxes and pay off the rest of the medical debt, she wasn't buying a yacht. She was just trying to get her life back.
Not even close. But the media machine was already in motion. And this is where the story shifts from a legal case to a case of, well, information warfare.
I was looking at that word count analysis in the retro report. It's staggering. So the local paper in Albuquerque, they ran a story that was almost 700 words long. It had all the facts.
Right, the parked car, the skin grafts, the 700 prior complaints, the whole picture.
Then the Associated Press wire service picks it up. The story shrinks to about 350 words. The key details start to get fuzzy. Then the big city papers get it. They run it as a little blurb, a weird news item. And now the story's down to maybe 50 words.
And at 50 words, you lose all the why. You lose the temperature, the prior notice, the severity of the injuries. All you're left with is a headline.
Woman spills coffee, sues McDonald's, wins millions.
And that headline is like candy for our brains. It confirms a bias many of us have, that the world is full of greedy people filing dumb lawsuits.
It taps into something psychologists call the just world hypothesis, right? This deep-seated need to believe that bad things only happen to people who deserve them, who made a mistake.
Exactly. It's much easier to think, well, she must have been clumsy and greedy than it is to accept the terrifying alternative.
Right.
That you could just be a grandmother buying a coffee and end up horribly maimed because of a corporate policy.
But this wasn't just a psychological phenomenon. This story was actively weaponized. We have to talk about the political climate of the mid-90s. This was right around the contract with America.
It was. And a huge part of that platform, pushed by Republicans, was something called tort reform.
Can you break that down? Because tort reform sounds intentionally boring.
It sounds dry, but it's so important. A tort is just a civil wrong, like being injured by a faulty product. Tort reform was a massive corporate-funded push to put legal caps on how much money juries could award in these cases.
So to limit a company's liability, no matter how badly they messed up.
Precisely. They argued that frivolous lawsuits were killing the economy. But to sell that idea to the public, they needed a villain. They needed a poster child.
And Stella Liebeck was their poster child.
She was a gift from heaven for them. Corporate-funded lobby groups ran ads. They briefed politicians. They fed op-eds to newspapers, all using this distorted 50-word version of the story. They turned a 79-year-old victim into a cartoon villain.
And it worked. The laws passed. It became much harder for everyday people to hold corporations accountable.
And it created a cultural stigma. I mean, think about it. Now, if you get hurt by a product, there's this hesitation. You don't want to be that coffee lady. You don't want to be mocked on late-night TV.
The mocking was everywhere. Seinfeld did a bit on it. Letterman, Leno, there were songs about it. It's wild to think that while this woman was enduring painful recoveries, the entire country was having a good laugh at her expense.
Her family said she felt bullied by the world. She died in 2004, and she never really escaped the shame that the media created for her. She felt like people saw her as a thief.
That really is the ultimate tragedy here. A woman's reputation was destroyed just to help big companies save money on their insurance premiums.
And to make the rest of us feel a little bit smarter, a little superior. We laughed because it was easier than being outraged.
So when we step back and look at this whole story, the burns, the corporate calculus, the political spin, what's the real lesson here?
I think the lesson is about information overload. In our world, news gets compressed until it fits in a headline or a meme. We trade context for speed. And the Stella Liebeck case is the ultimate proof that if you strip enough words out of a story, you can literally turn the truth inside out. You can make a victim look like a villain.
It just makes you wonder, what stories are we getting wrong today? When you see a headline that perfectly confirms your biases, that makes you instantly angry or makes you want to mock someone, are you just falling into the same trap?
That's the question, isn't it? It's the litmus test. If a story fits your worldview a little too perfectly, you probably need to go looking for the original 700-word article. You're probably missing the skin grafts, so to speak.
A sobering thought. We like to think we're more sophisticated now than people were in the 90s, but the machine that distorts these stories has only gotten faster and more efficient.
It really has. The headlines are shorter, and our reactions are quicker.
Well, thank you for this. It's a story everyone thinks they know, but almost no one actually does.
Always look for the facts behind the punchline.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.